Hello, Carola Strassner from FH Münster University of Applied Sciences in Germany here. I will be taking you into the world of food systems so that you will have a good grounding for the way we look at food systems and food-related issues in this course. After working through this lecture, you should be able to describe the characteristics of a system, distinguish between food systems and food chains, and apply systems thinking to food. So in this lecture, we will cover systems, what the approach is rooted in and where it is used in science, as well as first system basics. Then we will look at systems thinking and the application to the field of food. That will bring us to chains, supply chains and value chains, and in contrast, to food systems, where we look at definitions and our understanding. We'll consider scales in food systems, and finally, studying food systems. But first, we need to take a look at two related words that are different in meaning. That difference is important for this lecture. Be aware that when we speak of systems or systemic thinking, it is not the same as systematic thinking. Systematic means having a plan or a method, while systemic means affecting an entire body or organism. So systematic thinking deals with orderly, methodical thinking, while systemic thinking deals with the behavior of wholes. Let's start our journey with systems theory. This is what the systems approach is rooted in. Fritjof Capra describes it as an interdisciplinary theory about every system in nature, in society, and in many scientific domains, as well as a framework with which we can investigate phenomena from a holistic approach. You may be reminded of Aristotle's holism, that knowledge is derived from the understanding of the whole and not from the understanding of the individual single parts. Let's have a look at the broad range of systems theory, of which there are actually very many that have been developed over the past century. There is Ludwig von Bertalanffy's general systems theory, where principles and concepts were developed that are to be applied across a very broad range of disciplines. Niklas Luhmann worked on social systems. J. Forrester was a computer engineer and developed applications for information systems. Dana Meadows was an environmental scientist who worked with systems. You may know her as the co-author of the book, The Limits to Growth, a report on a Club of Rome project. And more recently, Elizabeth Dostal, who developed the biomatrix theory by integrating many elements from various system theories. There are many more scientists and thinkers who have contributed to building upon this body of knowledge. We can see this also in systems research, which has been pursued in many areas. Here are some examples. In business management, and especially in organizational communication and learning, starting at the left, and moving across to systems science used in cybernetics research and for chaos theory. Systems thinking is furthermore an approach to deal with complexity or complex problems, so it also encompasses complexity research. And it is used a lot for research into biological systems and into sociological systems. Increasingly, we even see it applied to health systems, in environmental science, and in psychotherapy, for example, in family therapy. Each of these fields has its own body of research methods. Let us now look at some basics. What is a system? A system is made up of parts, which we call elements. These parts are connected, and therefore they affect each other. There can be a system within a system. We would call it a subsystem. Subsystems can overlap with other systems or other subsystems. A system is an interconnected set of elements that is coherently organized in a way that achieves something. It therefore has a function or a purpose. Many things are systems. You may remember the term ecosystem. Now think of a school, a company, a national economy, a tree or a forest, a farm, or your digestive system. All of these are examples of systems. Systems thinking includes the study of systems, but many would say it's more than that. It's a way of thinking, a way of looking at things, a mindset that can be applied to any field. It focuses on interactions of elements of a system and looks at the nature of interaction over time. So please refer to the reading by Darian Aronson, which will provide you with some more about systems thinking. When we speak of food systems, we're actually speaking of a mix of systems, namely biosystems, social systems, and mechanical systems. And we might also add conceptual systems, meaning the information or knowledge, and technical systems, that is, information and communications technology systems. When we as stakeholders look at food systems, we say that their essential purpose is to feed humans. Therefore, when we want to represent or study a food system, we need to include both production and consumption and humans. By extension, an organic food system would include organic production, organic consumption, and humans. To date, the approaches used in food issues that you've probably seen widely used are the value chain approach. It is based on Michael Porter's value chain analysis and his value system analysis, and that comes from business science studies. It is useful for looking at value creation in a farm, for example, or a processor company, or a trade business or certifier. You may also have seen circular representation, so parts put in a circle. So if you think about it, a circle is actually a line that meets itself, and a circle may well show the cyclical nature of items linked to each other. But a system cannot be represented by a single circle. So what is the circle useful for? Well, you can find where the circle's not been closed. If you think of agriculture or diet, you can think of minerals, soil regeneration, packaging, all sorts of things in the system where circles haven't been closed. But here we come to a major difference between system thinking and value chain or supply chain thinking. A system is not a line. A system is not linear, and it cannot be represented by a line only. Instead, we can ask, how would we best represent a system then? Well, if you do a simple image search in an online search machine, you will find generic food system images that are mostly unspecific models. Visualizing a system is best shown as a net or a network, like a neural network in the brain, something like you see represented on this slide. There are a number of food system definitions in academic literature. The description by the Food and Agriculture Organization that you see here on the slide is taken from your reading. Food systems are complex, they are adaptive, and they are dynamic, and they may have cross-scale interactions between the biophysical and social factors, and these may be linked through feedback mechanisms. Elements of food systems, as described in the scientific literature, include actors, activities, interactions, boundaries, drivers, inputs, and outcomes. But be aware that there are differences in the language and the terms used to describe food systems in the literature. When we look at systems, there are a number of dimensions we can consider. Here on this slide, we look at scales in food systems. The scales we present here are a time scale, a temporal scale, where we ask ourselves what time frame is being studied. It could be the last 10 or 20 years, it could be from a certain date until the present moment, or it could be a certain period in the history. Another scale is the spatial scale. What area that is undivided is being studied. It might be a very small spatial scale, such as on a household level. It may be regional, global. Then there's a jurisdictional scale, which really means the question of the authorities that are implicated in the system. But typically it also is used to describe political subdivisions that are relevant. It may be national boundaries, federal or municipal. Organizational scales include the look at the organizational unit of study. So it might be a single independent unit, it may be a cooperative, a department, an organization. All these are organizational scales. Finally, some words about studying food systems. To study a food system, we need to decide on the boundaries of our food system. Whatever is outside of the boundary, we call the environment of the food system. Then we identify and know which categories the elements in our system come from. We focus on the interactions of the elements of a system. So that means we can look at flows that may be information flows, material flows, or energy flows. The larger our system of study is, whether that's in space or over time or both, means that we will probably lack details unless we have a very large team of researchers. Applying systems to food is a relatively new field, so there is only some methodology that has been developed and tested. One example is the city regions food systems approach. This is designed to improve our insights into the flows of resources such as food, waste, people, and knowledge, and it looks at them moving from rural to peri-urban to urban and back again. It also looks at policies and the process needed to enable sustainability. You can follow how the team went about developing this in your reading. In this slide and the following one, I share with you some student work on a food system. These were done by students from the Warsaw University of Life Sciences. The organizational scale was a single restaurant unit, a Monegasque restaurant called Elsa, which is 100% organic and certified and sources almost all foods from within a 100-kilometer radius. Students were free to choose the other scales. Here, the student group in Warsaw in 2017 collected mainly organizational elements. They visualized Elsa's food system using the plane of the paper to indicate distances, and they colored the connections differently between the elements to follow either information or finance or agricultural materials. In 2020, a mixed student group from the University of Gastronomic Sciences in Italy also studied Elsa's food system and represented it in a different way, as you can see here. The kitchen chef had by then left Elsa, so the group chose a retrospective study looking at the time up until he left. In closing, I would like to summarize some central points of this lecture. Food systems serve or should serve the basic human needs of food and drink necessary in order to sustain human life well. To explore a system, you as the viewer must connect the food with the people or the people with the food through whatever lies between them. How does energy, material, and information flow among the different elements in the system? What are the patterns of interaction? It's the connections between the dots, the elements, that are important in food system studies. So look at what is happening between the elements. A systems approach is useful because we can study phenomena such as interdependencies, feedback loops, leverage points within systems, and emergent behavior, amongst other things. You have now heard the lecture on food systems, connecting the dots. On the following slide, you will find all references used in the lecture and indicated on the slides themselves. These references include your 3 readings. And on the very last slide, you will here find a bibliography with additional resources. Enjoy the coming lectures. Goodbye.